Alright, today we are going to look at part of the congruence theorems. You have side, 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 side angle side, hypotenuse leg, and then of course back to some proofs. Okay, so triangle congruence. So we've already established ways to prove triangles are similar, but now we are looking at ways to prove that they are congruent. Okay. So, if two triangles are congruent, then all of their corresponding sides are congruent. And all of their corresponding angles are congruent. Okay, so when we are proving that triangles were similar, we focused on corresponding sides being proportional and angles congruent. Now we're looking at the sides being congruent as well as the angles being congruent. So two triangles that are congruent are identical. So if you want to highlight that, you can. They are identical. So triangle ABC and DEF are congruent. Which angle corresponds with angle A? Which angle corresponds with angle B? Okay, take a minute and solve for the rest of these 4 questions. Okay, hopefully you said angle F corresponds with angle C. And I'm going to notate that by putting 3 arcs on those angles. Which side corresponds with AB? So this side here. Hopefully you put DE. BC corresponds with EF. And AC corresponds with DF. Example 1. What is the length of RT? Okay, so RT. If RTF is congruent to triangle PSY. Okay, so when you're trying to figure out which sides correspond with each other, okay, you're looking at the order of which the triangle is named. Okay, so RT corresponds with PS. Okay. TF would correspond with SY. PY would correspond with RF. Okay, so if we're looking for RT, we're setting up RT is equal to PS. Okay, so RT equals PS, which means X equals 2Y minus 4. Okay, because we have 2 variables, we know that we need to set up a system in order to solve for our missing pieces. Okay, so we need to set up another equation. We are also given RF. What does RF correspond to? RF corresponds to PY. So now you have y plus 5 equals 3x plus 2. Okay, so now I need to solve my system. Okay, I'm going to solve my system by substitution because I already know what x equals. So I'm going to have y plus 5 equals 3 in place of x, I'm substituting in 2y minus 4 plus 2. So I have y plus 5 equals 6y minus 12 plus 2. Y plus 5 equals 6y minus 10. And then we're going to keep solving. Okay, I know y equals 3. Okay, now I'm going to substitute in for y and get x. So I have x equals 2 times 3 minus 4. Okay, so I know x equals 2, and our question asks for the length of RT. RT is just x, so RT equals 2 units. Okay, so we brought back a lot of algebra here, setting up equations and solving systems. Okay, setting up equations and solving systems. On this one, the key part here is making sure that you set the right things equal to each other. So again, pay attention to how your triangles are named and which side corresponds with which. Example 2. If triangle CAT is congruent to triangle DOG, CA equals 4x minus y, CT equals 3y minus 2, DO equals 2x plus 2, and DG equals x plus 2y, find the value of x and y. So based off of our congruency statement, we know that CA equals what? DO. We know that AT equals OG. We know that CT equals DG. And if you want to take a second and actually draw the pictures, CAT, DOG, we can pretend that those are congruent. Let's label our pieces. 4x minus y, 3y minus 2, 2x plus 2, and x plus 2y. Okay, so I know that I'm going to set CA equal to DO. So 4x minus y equals 2x plus 2. Okay, and I also know that CT is equal to DG. So I'm going to have 3y minus 2 equals x plus 2y. Okay, I'm going to solve one of these for one of my variables so that it makes it easier to substitute in. I'm going to solve this second part. So if I subtract 2y from both sides, I get y minus 2 equals x. And then I can substitute that into this equation here. So I have 4y minus 2 minus y equals 2x plus 2. I have 4y minus 8 minus y equals 2x plus 2. Okay, I also need to substitute in for x over here. I forgot to do that at the beginning. So 4y minus 8 minus y equals 2. Y minus 2 plus 2. So combine like terms. I have 3y minus 8 equals 2y minus 4 plus 2. Subtract 2y from both sides. I have y minus 8 equals a negative 2. Add 8. Y equals 6. Okay, I'm going to plug back in. 6 minus 2 equals x. So x equals 4. Okay, so it's going to get tricky because you've got to know how to set up and solve systems. Alright, example 3. Write a congruency statement that applies to this figure. Okay. We talked about the importance of how you name triangles and how the order of which you name the triangle is extremely important because the sides need to correspond with each other. So how are we going to figure out which side corresponds with which side of the triangle, of the other triangle? You can do the distance formula, or you can do Pythagorean theorem. So you need to make sure that you line up your corresponding sides properly. So I think it's pretty easy to know that AM probably corresponds with BL. The length of that is 1, 2, 3, 4. The length of this is 6. Okay. We need to find the length of VP. This is 4. This is 8. So this is going to be the square root of 64 plus 16, which is 80. Down here, you have 2 and 8. So this is going to be the square root of 64 plus 4, which is 68. And now we need to see which one matches up with which over here. 4, 8, square root of 80, 2, 8, square root of 68. Okay, so when we start naming our triangles, if we have A, G, M, that's going to be congruent to triangle. Which side corresponds with AG? LP. Which side corresponds with GM? PV. And then to double check that you did it right, you want to make sure that AM is corresponding with LV. Okay, and then you'll know that you've done it right. Okay, so these are application problems once you know that you have congruent triangles. Okay, so example 1 through 3 were applications after we know that we have congruent triangles. Now you may ask, how do you prove that triangles are congruent? Okay, so we're going to introduce 3 theorems. The first one, SSS, stands for side, side, side. If 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding sides of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. Okay. So let's look at example 4. Are these triangles congruent? Yes or no? Okay, in order to prove it by side, 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 we need all 3 sides of the triangles congruent. What do you know about EG for both of these triangles? They are the same. Therefore, do we have all 3 sides congruent? Yes. So are the triangles congruent? Yes. Okay, when it comes to naming them, okay, let's say start with EFG on this side. Which side corresponds with EF on this side, this triangle? EH, very good. Which side corresponds with FG? HG. Okay, so that is how you would write your congruent statement. Okay, SAS congruence theorem stands for side, angle, side. It's two sides in the included angle, so make sure you pay attention to that. It is the included angle, so it's the angle that creates those two sides. If two sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding sides and included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So, are these triangles congruent? Well, what do you know about angle SUW? So, SUW is also a right angle because they're supplementary, and 90 and 90 give you 180. Okay. You know that TU is congruent to UW. What else do you know is congruent in this triangle? SU. Okay, so SU is the same in both triangles. Okay, therefore you have side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. When you write your congruent statement, STU is congruent to triangle SWU. Okay, our next congruence theorem is what we call hypotenuse leg congruence theorem. So HL, hypotenuse leg. Okay, if you have at least one leg and a hypotenuse congruent, then you know that the third side, or the other leg, has also got to be congruent. But you only need to know that the hypotenuse and the hypotenuse and one leg are congruent. So, if the hypotenuse and one leg of a right triangle are congruent to the hypotenuse and corresponding leg of another right triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So, example 5, are these triangles congruent? Okay, well, here's our legs that are congruent. Are the hypotenuses, or hypotenuses, not sure the proper terminology, but are the hypotenuses congruent? Yes. So would these two triangles be congruent? Yes. Okay. So if this one's named ZXY, which side corresponds with ZX? YR. And then you're left with YRZ. Okay, because then XY corresponds with RZ, and ZY corresponds with YZ, or ZY. Okay, take 2 minutes and try 1 and 2 on your own. Take 2 minutes and try 1 and 2 on your own. Determine how the triangles are congruent and write a congruency statement. hopefully you said that triangle POR is congruent to triangle SOR, and the reason being is side, angle, side. Number 2, triangle TVU is congruent to triangle WXT by hypotenuse leg. Alright, let's look at a couple of these together and then you'll do a couple on your own. Tell whether the SSS, SAS, or HL postulate can prove the triangles congruent. Write a congruency statement. If the triangles cannot be proved congruent, write not possible and do not include a congruent statement. So if they are not congruent, do not try writing a statement. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Okay, so it gives us a side, it gives us a side here. Okay, so this is congruent to this. This one's congruent to this one. Okay, so we know we're working with two sides, so it's not going to be hypotenuse, and there's no right angle. Okay, so right now we're looking at SSS or SAS. Is there an angle that is also congruent? Okay, hopefully you notice that this angle is congruent to this angle because of vertical angles. Okay, so now we can say by side, angle, side, the two triangles are congruent. Okay, our similarity statement could be HKG is congruent to triangle what? LKM. Okay, number 2. We have a side here that are congruent. What do we know is the angle of SUW? A right angle, so 90 degrees. So we know that they have a side congruent, an angle congruent. What else do they have in common? SU. Okay, so are our triangles congruent? Yes, by what? Side, angle, side. Notice that just because this is a right angle, this is not HL. Okay, we are not given the lengths of the hypotenuses, so it is not HL. It is side, angle, side. So triangle STU is congruent to triangle SWU. Number 3. Okay, so far we've been given two sets of congruent sides. So it's again SSS or SAS. Can we prove another set of sides congruent? Yes, KL, because KL is the same for both triangles. Therefore, number 3 is congruent by side, side, side. Triangle KNL is congruent to triangle LMK. Okay, take 2 minutes and do 4, 5, and 6. Take 2 minutes and do 4, 5, and 6. Okay, for number 4, hopefully you said not congruent. Okay, although it looks like it's side, angle, side for triangle ICT, it is actually side, side, angle for triangle CTK. Okay, so make sure you pay attention to both triangles and how they're set up, because they're not always just a reflection of each other. So these are not congruent. Okay, whereas in number 5, you have side, angle, side, and you also have side, angle, side. So in this one, you can say side, angle, side, and you could say YAE is similar, or sorry, congruent to triangle YAR. Okay, number 6, you have a side congruent and you have your right angle. You're only given 2 pieces, therefore you cannot prove these. You for sure can't prove side, 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 or side, angle, side, and you can't prove HL because they did not tell you about the hypotenuse. So these ones are also not congruent. Okay, so that is the gist of these congruence theorems. So we just learned 3. Okay, now we're going to do a couple more practice problems real quick, and then we're going to get into proofs. So, what additional information would you need to prove the triangle is congruent by HL? Okay, so by HL. So we have that our hypotenuses are equal to each other. So what other piece of information would we need? There's 2 options. Okay, you would need that EA is congruent to AD, or option 2 would be that EB is congruent to DC. So at some point you need to get one of your sets of legs congruent to each other in order to prove HL. Number 8, FGH and IJK. You know that right angles H and K. Oops, I've drawn mine wrong. Let me redo them. Oh my goodness, I'm messing this all up. So I, K, J, F, H, G. Okay, so H and K are my right angles, so in order to prove HL, you for sure need to know that FG is congruent to what? IJ, so that's our hypotenuse. And what else do you have to prove? Very good. At least one set of legs congruent. So either FH is congruent to IK, or HG is congruent to KJ. Okie dokie. Number 9. Statement, reasons, because we have a proof. Our first statement is always, always, always our given. So AB is congruent to RC, and AB is parallel to GH. Okay. The reason being is given, and we are trying to prove our 2 triangles congruent. Okay, so what else do we need to prove? Okay, are we going to be doing hypotenuse leg? No, because there's no right angle. So we're either trying to prove side, 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 or side, angle, side. What's another side that they share or have congruent? AC. And what property is that called? Reflexive. Okay, so now we have two sides congruent. Is there any way of proving BC and A are congruent? Or are we better off trying to do side, angle, side? Okay, we're better off doing side, angle, side because we'll get to that first before we get to side, side, side. What two angles are congruent? 1 and 2. Why are angles 1 and 2 congruent? Alternate interior angles. So just like that, we are at side, angle, side. So we can say our fourth step, which is triangle ABC, is congruent to triangle CRA. And that is by side, angle, side congruence theorem. Okay. The remaining three proofs I want you guys to try on your own. Okay. The answers are posted on the Student Learning Hub. Okay. If you need any help or assistance, ask your neighbors. Try to work together on these. But they're on the Student Learning Hub. Okay. So if you need any help with these notes or want to go back and rewatch this video, it is on the Student Learning Hub. Okay. You guys have 20 minutes to work on your homework assignment. Okay, the sub or whoever is covering the class has the answer key up here so that you can look at them. She or he also has the answer key to the notes. So if you want to come and check your proof, you may do so. The last 20 minutes of class will be your skills check. Okay, so the last 20 minutes of class you will be taking your skills check. The skills check will be the first grade of next 6 weeks.